The White House says it's the right time for Israel to scale back its military offensive in the Gaza Strip, even as Israeli leaders vow to intensify their operation against the territory's ruling Hamas militant group. Today is Monday, January 15th, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report. The White House says it's the right time for Israel to scale back its military offensive in the Gaza Strip, even as Israeli leaders vow to intensify their operation against the territory's ruling Hamas militant group. The U.S. comments on Sunday exposed the growing differences between the close allies on the 100th day of the war. Also, Sunday, Israeli warplanes struck targets in Lebanon following a Hezbollah missile attack in northern Israel that killed 2 Israeli civilians, an older woman and her adult son. The exchange of fire underscored concerns that the Gaza violence could trigger wider fighting across the region. The Israel-Hamas war has quickly shattered many records when it comes to the history of conflicts between the bitter enemies. It's the deadliest, the most destructive, and the longest. Israel has razed large swaths of the Gaza Strip, where researchers assess that nearly half of all buildings are likely damaged or destroyed. Nearly 24,000 people in the Gaza Strip have been killed, which amounts to more than 1% of Gaza's population. Meanwhile, the Hamas attack on Israel that spurred the war was the single deadliest day in Israeli history. Sub-freezing temperatures blasting much of the U.S. have put millions of Americans at risk of potentially dangerous cold, as winter storms have left 4 dead and continue to dump snow from coast to coast. The National Weather Service said Sunday that wind chills could plummet as low as minus 70 degrees in Montana and the Dakotas. An estimated 95 million Americans faced potential windy, frigid conditions, with temperatures below zero, even into northern Texas. Buffalo, New York, could see up to 2 feet of snow, weather so severe it forced an NFL playoff game between the Buffalo Bills and Pittsburgh Steelers to be postponed from Sunday to Monday. Elsewhere, parts of the South braced for a round of snow. Donald Trump's campaign is banking on his loyal supporters to turn out for Monday night's Iowa caucuses. The campaign believes supporters who have stood in lengthy lines for his rallies won't mind going out in what will be the coldest caucus night in modern history, with temperatures forecast to plunge to minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Much of the recent focus has been on the race for second place and whether Nikki Haley will finish ahead of Ron DeSantis. Trump's campaign is hoping for the kind of blowout that will blunt his rival's momentum as he tries to pivot to the general election. An Iowa principal who put himself in harm's way to protect students during a school shooting earlier this month has died. Caldwell Parish Funeral Home and Crematory confirmed the death of Perry High School principal Dan Marburger after the family announced it on a GoFundMe page. Marburger died Sunday morning after he was critically injured during the January 4th attack. An 11-year-old was also killed in the shooting, and 6 other people were injured before the 17-year-old shooter died of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Denmark's prime minister has proclaimed Frederik X as king after his mother, Queen Margrethe II, formally signed her abdication. massive crowds turned out to rejoice in the throne passing from a beloved monarch to her popular son. Many thousands of people gathered outside the palace where the royal succession took place on Sunday. The mood was jubilant as the Nordic nation experienced its first royal succession in more than a half-century, and one not caused by the death of a monarch. The 83-year-old Margrethe is the first Danish monarch to voluntarily relinquish the throne in nearly 900 years. The U.S. military isn't immune to the country's deep political polarization, and the service academies are trying to update how they teach future officers to navigate that divide. Classroom instruction includes deeper discussions about the oaths they take and a focus on loyalty to the Constitution. The discussions have taken on increased significance since the riot at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and as former President Donald Trump campaigns for the White House. Trump has laid out an aggressive agenda that includes potentially using the military in ways that other presidents haven't. Jim Harbaugh is set to meet with the Los Angeles Chargers about their head coaching vacancy. That's according to a person familiar with the situation who spoke to the Associated Press on condition of anonymity because the person wasn't at liberty to publicly discuss personnel moves. Word of Harbaugh's plans comes 1 week after he led the University of Michigan to a national title. A person familiar with Harbaugh's thinking tells the AP that Harbaugh is also considering staying at Michigan. That person spoke on condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the discussions. The U.S. Homeland Security Department says Texas denied federal agents access to a stretch of border when they were trying to rescue 3 migrants who drowned. The federal government's account came hours after U.S. Rep. Henry Cuellar said the Texas Military Department and Texas National Guard did not grant access to Border Patrol agents to save the migrants. Friday night, Mexican authorities recovered the bodies of a woman and 2 children. Saturday, across the border, from Eagle Pass, Texas. South Korea's military says North Korea has fired a suspected intermediate-range ballistic missile toward the sea. The launch was the North's first this year and comes 2 months after it claimed to have tested engines for a new, harder-to-detect missile capable of striking distant U.S. targets in the region. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says it has detected a suspected intermediate-range ballistic missile launch from the North's capital region on Sunday afternoon. It said the missile flew toward the North's eastern waters. Japan's defense ministry also said it spotted a possible ballistic missile launch by North Korea. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Monday, January 15th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.